Hey, what's up, everybody? Beyond Biocentrism by Robert Lanza, MD, with Bob Berman, an astronomer. Something I've been wanting to do more on this channel is to challenge myself and read a more diverse array of topics, especially things outside my usual areas or even outside my tastes. This time, I wanted to pick a book that would really challenge my ways of thinking. I found Beyond Biocentrism by typing in nonfiction recommendations or best nonfiction on YouTube. I'll link the video I found in the description. This recommendation is coming from a literature channel called Leaf by Leaf. So thank you, Leaf by Leaf. Check him out if you're into literature. He posts a lot of insightful discussions and deep dives into a variety of books. So, Beyond Biocentrism is one of several books by Robert Lanza on his idea called biocentrism. Other than this book, I've never heard of Robert Lanza before or of biocentrism. Well, I should say I've heard the ideas before, but never packaged quite like this. But everything I say in this video will be about this book only. So, biocentrism is the idea that consciousness not only dictates reality, but literally creates the universe. Of course, this would have profound implications on the nature of life and existence in general. This idea takes bits from Eastern mysticism and adds general relativity and quantum theory. They start off by trying to weaken the support for our currently held ideas about the nature of time, motion and space, and even life and death. Their stance is that all these things are illusions. Yes, even death is an illusion. They speak of states of realization that everything in the universe is one and of timelessness. This book looks into some of the implications of general relativity. Einstein showed that the passage of time is relative to the observer, which means that the way our brains interpret reality may give a very wrong impression of the true nature of reality. Take color, for example. Color is not some quality that exists out there in the universe, but it's a product of neural activity. So the authors of Beyond Biocentrism might say that this means it doesn't exist. However, they do not deal with the fact that even though it's true that color exists only in each of our minds, it is a same quality of the thing we're looking at that causes us to perceive a color. In this case, the wavelength of light reflected off the thing we're looking at. The authors go on and do the same thing with quantum mechanics and consciousness. Their angle focuses on science's inability to fully explain these things. I mean, we can explain the parts involved, but we can't explain exactly how brains create thought. Lanza's answer to these mysteries is biocentrism. I don't want this video to be a full breakdown of all of his arguments. After all, I'm not an expert and he may well be correct. But I feel it is my duty as a book reviewer to let you know what types of things you're going to be getting into if you buy this book. So here's just a couple of the claims that Lanza makes in Beyond Biocentrism. He speaks on the anthropic principle, saying that if the sun were much bigger or if we'd been hit by a larger asteroid, there'd be no life on Earth. He's talking about all these different parameters that make life seem fine-tuned for us. This is selection bias at work. The universe is a vast place, and this argument ignores all the places in it where these catastrophes did occur and prevent life from happening. Only in the places where things worked out could life complexify to the point of recognizing its good fortune. He uses the neurological condition of blind sight to support his idea, when this is an understood physical issue that you can read about in V.S. Ramachandran and Oliver Sacks' books. I assure you, blind sight is not magical. And Lanza is an MD, so my thinking is that he knows this. So why is he trying to use it to support mystical thinking? He uses variations of the double slit experiments to support biocentrism. I thought that a wave function represented a probability, but he's saying no, the photon is literally existing in all these different states simultaneously, as well as nowhere, until it is observed. I don't know, it could be. This is the closest we come to evidence in this book. I certainly don't know how to interpret the results from these double slit experiments, but it appears as though until something is observed, it exists as a probability rather than a particular solid thing. Richard Feynman said, "I think it's safe to say that no one understands quantum mechanics." Of course, that includes me and the authors of this book, too. They actually say, quote, "It's also vital that we not bestow upon quantum theory incorrect powers or notions such as those seen in some popular movies. Quantum theory is bizarre enough as is without giving additional fictional attributes," end quote. But that seems to be precisely what they're doing in this book. I'm not a student of quantum theory, but I've read enough of it to have been warned about this kind of thinking. I think the chapter on death may have been the most concerning. Lanza abandons logic and evidence altogether and simply goes into the innate wisdom approach. Regarding death, he says that you have an intuition that birth and death are illusions and that this is accompanied by a conviction, a sense of certainty, and is a recognition of reality. I don't even need to explain the fallacy here. They state multiple times that the book is science, but then you read passages like that, and there are quite a few of them. There's even a section talking about how one of the authors had a mystical experience, so that supports this biocentrism idea. Of course, a subjective experience like this is likely to be interpreted differently by anyone who has one. I could have one and claim that it supports my model. Mystical states are a wonderful thing, but they are a product of neural activity, like happiness or concern. You can even induce a mystical state by stimulating a region of the temporal lobe with transcranial magnetic stimulation. Could that be some kind of hack into the underlying nature of reality? I'd be curious to hear what Lanza would have to say about that. I can appreciate thinking creatively and challenging the status quo. It's from that kind of creative challenge that huge advances in our understanding are made, but you have to be able to support your claim. That doesn't mean misrepresenting already understood science or taking possibilities to their extreme without proper evidence. One more damning example of how this book is written. There's this parable, maybe you've heard, that given enough time, a monkey could type out the works of Shakespeare by randomly hitting keys. This is used to explain chance over long periods of time to account for complexification in evolution. But what Lanza conveniently leaves out of this argument is that the monkey only has to get one key right at a time, and all subsequent keystrokes are built off of that. And with each addition of a correct keystroke, another letter is saved from which we build, and so on until the works of Shakespeare have been copied. You're not just starting from scratch with each attempt. Either he knows this, or he's learned a straw man version of this argument. Either way, he's passing along a straw man version of it. Not on my watch, and that's how most of the arguments in this book work. See, it just so happens that for every argument he uses, I've read about from the actual experts who study these things, and I doubt they'd appreciate him saying these things. No serious scientific enterprise could tolerate this way of building a case. Now, I haven't looked into any criticism or support for this book, but I imagine there's a pretty solid wall of resistance for this in the scientific community. Alternatively, I could be wrong. Happens all the time. But if you're thinking about buying this book, I'd encourage you to check both sides. Science is about separating what may be from what is, or separating the wheat from the chaff. This book is trying to sustain itself with the chaff. There are a few times when real science is included around the arguments, but not in ways that actually support his claims. It's as if to say, see, I have science on my side. And that's just it. The science is to the side of his arguments, not part of them. The further you get into this book, the more the authors start to sound like religious leaders than scientists. That's why this book makes sure to include that you can beat death with Lanza's model of reality. In the end, guys, it's some interesting and fun ideas, but the attacks and defenses he brings are an exercise in fallacy. And there's not much in this book that I haven't encountered somewhere else before. It's Eastern mysticism repackaged in a New Age skin. The confidence of the authors is concerning. They get pretty smug and try to make you feel stupid if you agree with the current understanding of the universe. It's been said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. You won't find any good arguments in this book that are compelling. The double slit results certainly stand out as noteworthy, but to take that as consciousness literally creates reality is quite a leap. That would mean that advanced consciousness has always existed, but we know that it grew out of something more simplistic. Just because we can't say for certain how it all started does not mean that we should just make stuff up. And it doesn't help that the idea of biocentrism is completely unfalsifiable. I think it's a normal part of our curious nature to imagine what the universe could be and how it came to be and what it all means. And if you've experienced that oneness and timelessness that he describes, you're going to want to be spending a lot more time thinking about these things. But most people don't go and write a book like Beyond Biocentrism. When it comes to oneness and timelessness, yes, I've experienced those states and they're life-changing, but I think it's a mistake to misattribute that to something other than physical processes in the brain. It's true that we don't currently have a working explanation for consciousness, but that shouldn't turn into a reason to just make something up unless you can demonstrate some compelling support. It's fitting that I read this book right after Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. That book denounces anthropocentrism, and this book takes anthropocentrism to the extreme. Biocentrism is the ultimate in anthropocentrism. It's in the name. The next step is to just flat out claim to be God, which is not far off from biocentrism. Guys, books like this can be dangerous, especially when you're telling people that death is an illusion. Okay, that's how cults are started. The author states that this is not just another New Age woo-woo concept and that it's based in science, but just saying that does not make it true. This book deals with questions that people want answers to, and I could see how something like this might be very appealing to some, but how can we know if there's truth to it? That should matter. Lanza could be right about this biocentrism idea. It could be true, but if it were, why rely so much on fallacious arguments? If you are really to be satisfied with the information in this book, you may as well just invent your own grand unified theory. All right, guys, that's it for this one. I really hope you enjoyed this video. This was not an easy book for me to get through. But if you want to see for yourself what biocentrism is all about, check out Beyond Biocentrism by Robert Lanza with Bob Berman.